to start recording in three, two. I'll let you do the introduction.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Unconnoisseur. My name's Matt.
And I'm Drew.
So we're on a journey together as brothers, listening to jazz music, and we're just inviting you along with us on our journey. It's been a great journey so far. We've got 10 videos done already, and you know what? I look forward to recording every week. So thank you for joining us today. We're called the Unconnoisseurs because we're not professionals jazz musicians, but we are learning to listen to jazz. And we've got a lot of jazz in our ear all week long, and man, I'll tell you what a journey, right, Drew?
It has been a phenomenal journey.
Yeah, this week is episode number 90. We're going to talk about Cassandra Wilson. I got a comment on one of my from somebody in my household this week that we need to mention the artist a little bit more throughout the episode just to keep them informed of who we're talking about. So Cassandra Wilson is the artist that we're talking about this week. Um, and I've got I've got a slideshow, and we'll get into that in a minute. But Drew, tell me what the week in music was like for you. Did you have some good music in your ear this week?
Man, I've had a lot of great music in my ear this week. The music that we're listening to and we'll talk about tomorrow has been a marathon. I did that today. It seems like 6 hours of music. I've gone back to a lot of the standard stuff that I've listened to over the past. These, of course, recording this, I get the pleasure of listening to the broadcast again in my ears when we talk about it. So I drop in that music, and I really enjoyed Jocko and Pat Metheny together in their earlier
Yeah.
albums. I did a lot of earlier stuff and a couple of later albums that we'll get to. Today, I was stuck at the end of my Miles marathon on Malford Mulligan. And that soul voice, man, I've known him for a long time. I wish I really knew him, but he had been over to a house that I'd had 20 some years ago here in Austin, and I got to hang out with him. And so I really feel like I got to know him over those years. And he'd been on the Kick Butt Gospel Records and done a lot of albums with Greg Atkins. I haven't seen him in eons,
He
but to
did
turn
the
on.
gospel according to Austin albums, right?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
He
Right.
had one of his own, and then he was on the first album, The Gospel According to Austin, Volume One.
Mhm.
I came across him because of you. It seems like a lifetime ago when he was with Storyville,
Oh my
and
goodness.
you freaked out over him then, and I just didn't realize at the time how important his relationship would play. Meeting him in person, and then hanging out with him at several of his gigs. And then I ended up taking somebody on a motorcycle ride one night to go hear a friend of mine play at Hard Rock Cafe. And it turns out that they grew up together outside of Austin. So small world.
Wow.
But I started listening to that blues sound today, and just it took me away because of who we're listening to, or who we have listened to all week long, Cassandra
Mhm.
Wilson.
Mhm.
Blue Light Till Dawn is this album, and man, her sound. I know what we rated it then, and to actually put that in contrast with Malford Mulligan's voice and the true blues.
Yeah.
Is it jazz? Is it blues? It's Blue Light Till Dawn. Man, that's my been my week in music, and I've had a lot of things going. Had a big project to shoot. Have had bikes being built. I've had a lot with first week back after spring break with Lily, so it's
Mhm.
been fun time. She actually skipped school, if you will. We dropped her off and picked her up, but she was working on a farm for work experience all last week. So she had a busy week, and I know she was looking forward to normal routine again this week, as we are, as we all
Yeah.
are here. So, what about you? What's your week been like in music, and your week been like?
Well, music wise, again, I think I didn't probably do as much of tomorrow's artist as you might have, but I did a whole lot of that artist. And the cool thing is coming back and rehashing and re-listening to Cassandra. And I've got a confession to make. A year ago, when we first listened to Cassandra, we, we'll talk about our rating here in a little bit. But she's just one of the artists that have never come back to, or I don't get back to as recently as I should. So coming back and filling my ears again with Cassandra's voice this week, it was nice, and I forgot, and I'm actually glad the way that we're doing it, believe it or not. We're farther ahead in our journey, just so that everyone knows. Drew and I are farther ahead, but we come back and listen to this week's artist, Cassandra, again, so we get a kind of a what's the word I'm looking for? Retune in our ears, or a remix in our ears. Not a remix, but get to listen to it again. And so that's real fun for me. Let me interject a little bit more about Malford. The reason that I kind of ran into him or liked him quite so much is because I'm a huge Stevie Ray Vaughan fan. Stevie Ray Vaughan, his band was called Double Trouble, and Malford in Storyville. Malford is, he's an incredible singer, but Storyville was Double Trouble, kind of reincarnated after Stevie Ray Vaughan with Malford. And so, if you've never heard of Storyville, they're not jazz. So this recommendation does not, well, it comes from the unconnoisseur, but the blues side of me, man, I'll tell you what, was a huge Stevie Ray Vaughan fan, still am a huge Stevie Ray fan, but if you like Stevie Ray and you've never heard of Storyville, please, man, check them out, because they are cool. And then that'll lead you down the rabbit hole of Malford Milligan.
Yep.
And he's got an amazing voice. You sent that to me today, and I had that in my ears, and I just, I almost cried, because it's so sweet.
I had listened to it once before sending it to you. And as I stood there working on that bike, same thing. I was almost in tears. I was like, there's just something that hits. It's blues. I mean, for sure, singing a sad song, but that hit me pretty hard. So when I text you, I'd hit replay.
Yeah.
Because I wanted a double dose of it. And then I just put him on shuffle.
Yeah.
And now I'm thinking that 92, 93 is when you heard Storyville, or even before that.
Ooh, I don't know. I can look it up.
It doesn't matter, but then to know that he's still performing today, and my mistake is not going to track him down in Austin. And I know that several of those clubs where he would be playing are several of those where I began to listen to music some 20 years ago when I moved here. So I think I'm going to grab the camera one day and go out and find the stages where he's playing and just take some photos and appreciate it. I've always wanted to photograph him, never had the opportunity, so this will be my chance.
I'm very honored, because you actually got me the gospel according to Austin and a signature from Alfred on my CD. So you got me that, and I still have it in my collection. And I'm telling you, that's one of my prize. But anyways, if you know Storyville and you know Malford, I think you're going to enjoy this week's artist as well. We told you about Cassandra a little bit last week. Are you ready to move into Cassandra?
Well, I want to take this moment just to remind everybody, at the end of our videos, we do tell you who we're going to be listening to this week. I would take this opportunity to say that when we give you number 89 for next week, spend the week listening along. If you have plugged in Cassandra this week and you've listened to the album already, when you get a chance to hear our comments and hear our thoughts about it, it's important for you to give us your feedback on the album. You'll probably pick up something in Cassandra that we didn't hear. There may be a song that hits you different. There may be something that you pick up as far as who she performed with on the album, or something about the album label, which was Blue Note. But if you're following along in our journey, at the end of our videos, we will tell you who's coming up next week. And we encourage you to listen along to that album throughout this week. Our recommendation is once, just to enjoy the album and hear it. And then during the course of the week, put it on and listen to little snippets of it, or the whole way through. I know that the commitment of 1 hour or plus to listen to the album is tough, but it becomes a discipline that you will enjoy after a few weeks of doing it. And then comment next week, and we'll continue to take your the feedback that you got and mention Cassandra's name this week and in the following weeks who we were. But I did want to mention that it stood out to me as saying, yeah, listen to the music, and then when we start talking about it, you'll know who we were listening to this week, and hopefully you're excited by whoever it is, even Vix.
Well, and then the other important thing is please leave us comments. If you like our videos, if you don't like our videos, if you think we're knuckleheads, just leave us a comment, and we promise, to get better based on your recommendations. I really appreciate the comment that I got from a family member, just to reiterate, throughout the episode, that Cassandra Wilson is the one that we're talking about this week. And I'm sure that you'll put the album cover.
Yeah, I was going to say, the slide's going to be right here, right now. You can see number 90, Cassandra Wilson, Blue Light Till Dawn, on Blue Note, recorded in 1993. I was just a kid then.
Well, yeah, I wasn't. Yeah, I was just a kid. Yeah, absolutely.
All the gray hair in our beards say that may have been a while ago.
What gray hair?
So, tell me, Cassandra, what did you? If you pulled notes like I did this week, I went off on a real rabbit hole. So I'm gonna give you that opportunity. Okay. What did you find?
Let me go first then, and then I'll let you talk for a while. My notes from the week that we did it a year ago. Well, I put very good album, very good voice. I said I'm not sure I'll be able to distinguish her later unless I listen to more of her music, which, coming back this week and listening to it again, I think I told myself a lie a year ago. A year ago, it was what we didn't know, was kind of hurting us. And the farther along we get in our journey, the more we listen and the more it becomes recognizable to us, which is the important part of my journey. We've talked about that before, how the recognizability of an artist impacts me, and I think she's got one of those voices that is very recognizable. Now, if I was comparing Cassandra to anyone, it would be Karen Carpenter. Their voices are similar, and man, I'm telling you what. If you haven't heard Cassandra, please put her in your ear, because she's definitely worth an hour for this album. Okay, those are my notes. That's what I did.
Did you rabbit hole on any of her inspiration, or did you dig into any more of her albums?
I did. Yes. Well, first of all, her inspiration. We're talking about. We're talking about two other female singers that were some of her inspiration that we'll get to later in our journey. So I didn't want to talk about those quite just yet. But let me.
I think it's important to mention them, whether we come across the artists in the future or not. We don't know anything today about who we will experience tomorrow.
True.
And I think we're trying to play dumb here for y'all and pretend that we haven't gone. What are we on 49 this week, personally? So we've been doing this for a year, and we decided to start recording these conversations, and we wanted to back up to 100 because I personally believe, and there's going to be a comment on one of the videos that we'll respond to today, so you'll see that coming out before this video does. But the concept is building on our knowledge base, in principles that we would have learned in seminary, precept upon precept. You've got to have a good, strong foundation of what is before you can get to the meat and potatoes, if you will. And so what we've been doing from 199 down to 91 and now currently number 90 is building a foundation and a knowledge base of the music. It's been weird because it hasn't just been the music anymore. Who influenced who? So we start to read about them. Who was she singing with and performing with at the time? I'm going to get to that. All of these things, we start to build this foundation and knowledge of jazz music. as we are new to this, new to jazz, new to listening to jazz, new to playing jazz. So I think that's important to mention. So do you have those influences up there?
I do. I'm looking at them right here. She was heavily influenced by Abby Lincoln, and Betty Carter. Now, again, those names might not mean anything to you now. Stay tuned for future episodes, and we'll talk about Abby Lincoln and Betty Carter.
Or go
Um,
listen to those folks
or
this
yeah,
week.
absolutely, rabbit hole on your own, and see what you come across, and see what you like, and see what kind of inspiration that Cassandra got from those artists. You know, the thing is when I think about vocal jazz, and you and I talked about this on the Gregory Porter episode, we're just not huge vocal jazz fans. You know that you know if you've watched our channel that we kind of really were impressed by Gregory Porter. And Cassandra, she just really impresses me. She just really impresses me. She really does. Her tone and her vocal control is incredible. Jammed with Steve Coleman, um, and Coleman will come up later with the M bass discussion that we'll have. But yeah, all right. Let's. What about? Well, here, wait. Let me before I go any further. I did a couple other albums. Now, Blue Light Till Dawn is the album that we're talking about, and that's from 1993. Coming Forth by Day was her
Mm.
2015 album that I listened to this morning after I did Blue Light Till Dawn again. And then New Moon Daughter from 95. I kind of like to go, not necessarily in order, but I like to kind of skip some decades to see how the voice or the instrument or how the sound has changed or gotten better or maybe gotten worse, depending on the artist. Um, so those are a couple albums that I really. New Moon Daughter for me was was it's incredible. So that's one of the ones, if you're going to do the journey with us, do Blue Light Till Dawn and then hit New Moon Daughter next. So she's got a great discography too, by the way. She's been around and recorded quite a bit.
Um, what I ended up into with Cassandra was that she has something to say. And when you listen to her albums, when you listen to the way in which she comes across in her songs, the importance is she does have something to say. So listen carefully to her tone. I'm learning about the vocabulary of jazz in general, and if you think about each note and each phrase and so on and so forth having some meaning, listen to the way, not the lyrics, but listen to the way she sings it. And you begin to hear that influence later if you listen to Abby Lincoln and Betty Carter. I had a note here also inspired by Miles Davis. And one of the albums that I listened to was 1999's Traveling Miles. And that to me was just a fun album. Um, and I listened to Point of View from 86, Jump World from 90, um, Thunderbird from '06, and then Coming Forth by Day. Uh, I was really, at the time, I didn't understand the vocal jazz. I just didn't. And yes, we've said it 100 times. If we haven't said it 1,000 each week we talk, vocal jazz has probably not been a highlight for me. But Cassandra started to open my mind a little bit more to the female end of things. After Gregory Porter, we thought, well, we got to give this all a fair shake.
Mm-hmm.
The the songs that hit me on this album, You Don't Know What Love Is.
You don't know what love is until you learn the meaning of the blue.
Smooth and Silky. I wanted the rest of the album to go that way. New Moon Daughter.
The music slows and everybody starts the game. Honey, what's your name? And even though he doesn't know, I like his style. Wanna dance with him a while.
I listened to that probably half a dozen times, and if I listened to that one a half a dozen, You Don't Know What Love Is, I probably listened to a dozen times. And then Traveling Miles. I don't know if that was a song, but my note was it was actually the 13th studio album, the tribute to Miles. And so I think that inspiration from his tone and his style also came through in her voice, holding notes a little bit longer, playing or singing scarcely throughout the process. It was really cool. Is personally a powerful force. And one of the things I picked up in the reading and listening is she loved, I'm going to read the note, powerful force, loved the Afro beat both in and on Blue Light. And it is, I have to say, it's freeing to hear the beats that she sings with and the band behind her.
Here, wait, let me interject this real quick because this is actually from the magazine, and Wilson had a dream band, and together they made an album that dared discerning audiences and artists alike to think of jazz vocal as much more than scat over a ride cymbal. And I think for
Yep.
me, that's where I run into the issues with the vocal jazz is this. It's not the idea of scat, but it's the amount that they do in a song, maybe. And she has moved well beyond. She doesn't scat, or at least on the three albums that I listen to. And that kind of sets her apart in my book from other vocal jazz. Gregory Porter doesn't either, and so maybe that's why we like them more than some of the others, is just because they don't scat. Do you think?
I bet it is.
Okay.
I bet it is.
All right. I'm sorry. I
No,
interrupted your thought.
I think that was an important interjection there. It is the reminder to go get your Jazzwise magazine, jazzwisemagazine.com, so that you can read these little captions that go with each of these artists. And so in 2022, when they did this magazine, it was a special publication of the top 100 albums that shook the world. And it's basically a half a page data about each one of the artists and that album. We'll find as we move forward that sometimes that paragraph brings a lot more light to why the album is on here than just the album. And I am reminded, because I heard this again this week, art is subjective, and this list is really a subjective list. But when Jazzwise did this, I just want to read this because it's always been important. This is a ranked chart listing and looking at the landmark albums that changed jazz, changed lives, and brought the life affirming music forward. These may not be the biggest sellers, and some of it may be obscure and tough to find. But the fact of the matter remains that the albums as top 100s, they are subjective, and we're just choosing a list to go from there. So that'll be in the comment. Matt, you touched
and some of them are obscure. I will admit that.
Brotsman. You had mentioned this earlier, and this is the rabbit hole that I ended up chasing down this week because of Cassandra, was the M bass, M-bass. And this was a Steve Coleman deal. In the 1980s, it was a loose, I want to read my note here because it played in part to my personal journey, what is M bass. And I'll touch on that and wrap it up to somebody else here in a moment. The M-bass concept started in the 1980s as a loose collective of young African Americans. Those musicians included Steve Coleman, Graham Hayes, Cassandra Wilson, Jerry Allen, Robin Eubanks, Greg Osby. They emerged from Brooklyn with a new sound and specific ideas about creative expression. Steve coined the phrase M-bass, and M-bass was this: a micro basic array of structured extemporization, or embase for short. It does not denote a musical style, but a way of thinking about creating music. And I think that was really important to me, is just thinking differently than your jazz. What's jazz? AABA form, 16 bar, 12 bar blues, improv over it. But they started to think a little bit outside of the box here. And I think it was a big change in music for those musicians just listed. And it brought in expression of life experience, growth through creativity, and philosophical broadening. So you hear a lot about that in Wayne Shorter's book on how they talked about life in general. Parker would hang out with Dizzy, and they would put an arm down on a piano and then play all the notes that they could hear in that. These conversations would last for 12 to 18 hours in between gigs, but they would talk as much about life and experiences. And those experiences shaped the music. And that's what Steve Coleman, it seems like, tried to accomplish in the 80s, is taking this beyond music and bring it into a personal expression, and then turn music out of that. And here's where it hit me listening to this album again and looking over my notes again after almost a year later. Some of the same concepts that I understand through the dream that Kamasi had for changing of the guards. There is no guard to change in his explanation of that dream. They were gone. But we were fighting for a new sound in jazz, and Kamasi is working towards that. And I think Steve and Cassandra were working towards that in the 80s and 90s as well. A new style, a new sound, a new feel.
Okay, all right. So let's talk about Cassandra's style for a minute, because I kept thinking in my mind, if I was not on a jazz journey and I was listening to Cassandra, I wouldn't necessarily maybe classify it as jazz, even though she's a jazz artist. Do not get me wrong. But I was trying to kind of pigeonhole maybe the sound of the music. Is it blues? I mean, it's not rock, but I mean, is it blues? Is it country? There's definitely jazz in there, but again, when you think of jazz, you think of the AABA or the ABBA, 16 bars, this, that, and the other. So, I mean, I had a hard time, in my mind, kind of processing, well, yeah, okay, I can see why this is jazz. I mean, she's a jazz artist, do not get me wrong. But the kind of tunes that she was singing were more mellow. They were more um, uh, well, I was working today with her in my ear, and I was like, oh, this is perfect work music, because
Yep.
it's smooth, it's mellow. Whereas you get big band on, or some other exciting jazz. Not that it's not exciting. Some other exciting jazz music on in your ears, and then that's what you want to concentrate on instead of work. But with Cassandra, man, she put me at ease working this morning, just based on her voice. So,
Well,
the jazz.
right now we're going to play a section of Blue Light Till Dawn. This is the opening track to the album. And it's a blues tune, and there's no doubt.
The music slows and everybody starts the game. Honey, what's your name? And even though he doesn't know, I like his style. Wanna dance with him, oh, why? 'Cause I've been giving him eyes all night long. Wanna whisper the song in his ear.
All right, you ready? So, Blue Light Till Dawn, right? That's the one that we just listened to? It's an amazing song. The rest of the songs on the album, let me just go over a couple of them, because Black Crow, number 6, is a Joni Mitchell tune. Um, Number 10, Tupelo Honey, is a Van Morrison song. Blue Light Till Dawn, Cassandra wrote. Now, unfortunately for me, here, wait, the Black Crow, song number 13, is a Joni Mitchell song. And
Mhm.
unfortunately for me on iTunes, I don't know why, but the last three songs on the album that are listed are not available. They show up, but they're grayed out. I cannot listen to Skylark, song
Oh,
number
oh,
14 on
come
the
on.
album. I know, right? A Hoagie Carmichael song, Skylark, sung by Cassandra. Come on. That's the one that I'm going to have to go out and find this week. Is her version of Skylark. We talked about Skylark on Gregory Porter Week, and how just amazing it is. So it was just frustrating to me that I saw it on the track listing and I didn't see it in
Yep.
my album. Let me interject this as well. You were talking about the Jazzwise 99 list and the 2006 list. She was number 95 in on the list in 1999,
Okay.
and in 2006 she moved up she moved up to 94. So she moved up one spot from 1999 to 2006. Now, this week, this year, 2022, she is spot number 90. So she moved up five more spots in their list of top 100 albums that shook the world. Do you think that's a fair spot for her as number 90?
You know that we talk about that from time to time. Is it a fair spot for where they're at? What I don't know is what's coming, and I have to trust the guide. They know what's coming. Um, I might have moved it up because there would be a couple of albums that personally I question.
Mhm.
So I have to give thought to that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad. Again, I'm kind of torn. I'm glad it's where it's at because that means I get to listen to it for longer, I guess. Um, and I think it's fair, anyways. I think it's fair. So yeah, you're right. We've got
Yeah,
no place to rate them any differently than the magazine because we are on connoisseurs. We're not experts.
yeah.
And
I trust them.
yeah,
I do.
yeah, for sure.
Uh,
Yes, for sure.
so yeah, Matt, I would have to give that some thought if I would change it. But I think that what I said, and then we hit pause, and you commented, "We don't know. We're on
Right,
connoisseurs. Is this a fair number? We can only we can only say what we know,
right.
and I know nothing. I know nothing. I do know. By the way, I have to say this for Matt and I. This has been a fun journey. In the bio video that we have, you understand that Matt's a trumpet player or had been. I think one day he will be a trumpet player, and probably because of this journey, he'll probably wind up learning to play jazz. Mine started because of my daughter in jazz camp. And so I was bored with and in the rut, and I took inspiration from her playing the tenor sax. I wanted to challenge myself and play an instrument. So over this last little over a year, I've learned to play the trumpet. Um, no, I didn't learn to play it. I'm learning to play it. And as a child, I would have never ever wanted to play the trumpet because Matt was brilliant. So I wasn't ever going to compete with that. Today he doesn't play it, so I feel this opportunity to. So I've been learning. Part of my jazz journey has been learning to play the trumpet and jazz standards. And each night we do a Sunday night jazz ensemble. It was for kids, but I take Lily all the time, and I get to sit there. I might as well have my horn because I'm learning too. And each night, the instructor Joe, or last night Milo, who is our intern there, you got a solo? You're going to solo. You're going to solo on this song. Do you know what you're going to play for your solo? One song I had one written out, and one I had no idea what I was going to do. He said, "Do you know what scale to play behind this song?" I said, "Absolutely not. Which one should I play?" Uh, and my journey is learning to play an instrument, but this has been a little over a year. And so for me, I enjoy the challenge of the music. I enjoy listening to it. And there are days when Matt says it all the time, this is a marathon and not a sprint. I like to sprint to Monday morning so that we can record. And then I remember that I am overwhelmed with the amount of music. We're talking, you and I listened to 4 or 5 Cassandra albums
Mhm.
when we did this. That's 5+ hours of music that we have committed to really listening to, sometimes in passing and sometimes not. So, without further ado, I want to ask, first of all, did this album shake your world a year ago, and did it shake it today?
I would honestly, I would say a year ago because we we didn't know what we didn't know, and we still don't know a whole lot. But a year ago, I don't think it shook me as much as it did coming back to it, and really, after even all of the music that we've listened to the last year, I would say that has shaken me a little bit more. It's given me a greater appreciation for vocal jazz. And we've said it before in other episodes. My daughter Delaney, she reminded me, and she's a percussionist, and so her knowledge of percussion is beyond my comprehension. But she reminded me that the vocals are their instrument, and when you listen to Cassandra Wilson sing, you will be impressed with her instrument. I promise you. And you should have already, like Drew said, because we told you about Cassandra last week. Um, so yeah. What about you? Did it shake your world?
It did. I think in somewhat it wasn't her necessarily as much as it was just seeing that somebody is trying to change what jazz is. I think that Wynton's resurgence in the '80s, trying to bring the old school jazz back, is huge. I believe in that. But I also think as an art form, there's progression that needs to happen. And Cassandra, Steve Coleman, Greg Orsby, those names on that list were huge, and starting to think about this differently. It really shook my world coming back to it now, almost a year later, and listening to it, because now I understand that they were in the middle of the changing of the guards too. And I will talk gladly every day about Kamasi Washington and what he's doing. Trust me. Um, but I think it's the same concept. There's groups of people that want to shake up what jazz is, and we're
Mhm.
seeing that. And I think that Blue Light Till Dawn was it. I mentioned last week as we were talking about the album, pay attention to the record label.
Yeah.
Blue Note's been around a long time, and they have seen the turners and shakers of this jazz industry. And so just putting her on that label in and of itself tells you to be mindful of more coming from Blue Note Records.
Mhm. For sure.
So, yeah, it did. I have a question. What's your rating? What did you rate it at that week?
Well, that week, this week for Cassandra Wilson, we're co- we're coming off a Jocko week, so we both rated him very, very highly, and and I think Blue Note, I'm sorry, Cassandra Wilson, Blue Light Till Dawn was that inspiration for the vocal jazz again for me, just kind of the resurgence. So I rated her at an 8.5, and for me, I that's a really good rating for vocal jazz. Um, and I don't know. I mean, 8.5, anything above 5, obviously, I'm coming back and listening to again. And I've given her an 8.5. I didn't give her a fair shake over the last year, I have to be honest, and not coming back like I have done with several of the other artists that we're going to cover
Yeah.
here coming up. But I will add her to my list to come back to and listen to for the next year, for the next 5 years. I will. I'll listen to it for the
Well,
next
I
5.
okay, we've got time, so I want to ask this. Well, first, I'm going to say
Yeah.
this. I gave it an 8.0, flat
Mhm.
8,
Flat eight. Yep.
for some of the same reasons. The vocal jazz part of it, what am I in for? What I really appreciated was the blues atmosphere in it,
Mhm.
bringing in a little bit extra stuff. I think there were a couple of albums that hit me a little bit harder for her,
Yeah.
but now coming back, I might have rated it a little bit higher.
Yeah.
It did shake my world. And this is what I wanted to ask before I threw my number out there. as we began this a year ago, some of those albums were things that we would indicate, I'm definitely listening to this again. In these first 11 albums, how many would you say that you've gone back to? Now, we're posting up the 10 for 10. So
Right.
y'all, by the time this video comes out, go back and I'm going to let's see if I can get it right. I'm
Yeah.
going to put the link right here. I'm doing it backwards, where you can find that 10 for 10. But those first 10, how many of those have you really gone back to? I know for you, it's going to be Brad.
4. Out of the first 10, the ones
Yeah.
that I keep coming back to, not daily, but a lot. I have 4 in my listen to a lot list. Kamazi, for sure. He was
Amen.
number 98, and if you have not listened to our episode about Kamazi, and
I'll put
we
that
just,
link up here as well.
I mean, I hate to say gush on, but we just love Kamazi. And if you don't know
Yeah.
much about Kamazi, watch our episode number 98. And again, we are counting backwards. We have not done 98 episodes. So that is our third episode that we did, number 98. So Kamazi, um, Gregory Porter. He's,
True that.
true that, right? Brad Meldau.
Yep.
He's on my weekly. I mean, every week I want to listen to Brad,
Yep.
something by Brad, just to keep him in my ears. Jocko, I mean, you can't listen to Matheny, you can't listen to Weather Report, you can't
No.
listen to Shorter or
So
whatever.
I want to ask you
We're not
this
hearing Jocko.
about Jocko. Would you go back to this album? Or for Jocko, would you go to the Weather Report stuff or some of the Pat Metheny stuff?
I'd go to the Pat Metheny stuff, just because. I mean, I'm going to be very disappointed if Pat Metheny's not on the 2022 list. I will be very, very disappointed.
Matt, it's funny to me because I would say this. You know that you could look forward, and we won't. We don't want to know what's coming because of the
Correct.
surprise and the excitement week after week of, have you heard this? Do you know of that? Do you know of a man that played a recorder with his nose? I mean, those things like that.
Yeah. Well, and again, we're not lying to anybody when we say that we're farther along in our journey, but
Yeah.
we're still not through the magazine, and so we still don't know what's coming up. And
when you get done with the magazine, do you suppose that you'll have a grasp on jazz music?
let's just put it to you this way: I'm by far a jazz snob, but right now, I'm by far. I'm not a jazz snob,
Okay.
but I'm not listening to much else right now either,
Yeah.
besides jazz. I mean, it's kind of consuming. It's not over. I don't want to say overwhelming, but man, consuming is the word that I'm going to use, because a year ago, when I didn't have anything to do, I'd watch a movie or I'd watch television. And today, if I don't have anything to do, I always have something to do because it's listen to jazz. And
Yep.
I don't want to waste time. And don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with watching movies or listening to some other kind of music, but I'm choosing not to, just because it's a marathon, not a sprint. But
Yeah.
and we laugh about it all the time. Just plug me in, just Neo, hey, download the instructions to my brain, please. So I know it's not about that. It's about the
No.
entire journey encompassing. And if you're not overwhelmed with jazz, just you trust me, stay with us and you will get there. You will get to the place where you don't want to listen to anything else, I promise. So, what about you in the top 10, 11 that we've done? Was there anything
It's
else
interesting because Jocko's not on my instant, but Weather Report is.
Okay.
And Pat Metheny's, you love him, and I appreciate it. I love going to some of his stuff, but if I'm going to listen to anything, I go to Kamazi, and I love Sons of Kemet. The Comet is Coming, and some of the other things that Shabaka has done. I'm a huge fan of Shabaka and Kamazi especially. There are days when and Matt, I don't know if you've got the other camera up right now, if you can see this. there are days when you just need a McCallum and Gregory Porter. So this 12-year-old will experience Gregory Porter when I'm done. Um,
You better
but
save a
that
little bit then.
but that those are the ones, and then Brad, because of Finding Gabriel and Jacob's Ladder, that provides that really punch. To say that I enjoyed the heavy metal stuff and I enjoyed the electronic Grizz and Skrillex and so many others, I like that heavier stuff. So I tend to be gravitating towards Sons of Kemet, The Comet is Coming, because of Shabaka. And then I can't get away from Kamazi. If I
Right.
need to, Kamazi comes on. And I don't think about Tubby Hayes. I'm not jumping up and down to go back to Mike Westbrook or Tropo. But Cassandra was not one that I followed up with, but she will be.
Yeah.
She really will be. And I think that's the important part.
Yeah.
So it shook our worlds.
It
So
did. It did.
shaking the world for this week. Do you have that up? And would you like to introduce number 89 for this
Sure.
week's of listening pleasure?
Absolutely. So this week in your ears coming up is number 89, and the artist is Robert Glasper. The album is called Double Booked. It's also from the Blue Note label. It was available on LP and CD, recorded in 2009. Robert Glasper, Double Booked, and you'll have that artwork up as I talk about that. So the Double Booked album, you know, from 2009, we're not talking about ancient jazz. We're talking about new. We're talking about new jazz, and Robert is he's interesting, isn't he?
Oh,
he's
this is going to be it. Well,
he's got some
because
feelings about
because you
jazz,
guys know
doesn't
that
he?
we've already done this, it's going to be an exciting week.
Yeah.
Make sure that you plug into Robert Glasper and listen to some of the other albums. Be careful with a few of them. He does blend
Dad,
the hip hop. Yeah, Dad.
Dad, be careful.
He blends some of those hip hop worlds, which I didn't appreciate that week as much as I did in the weeks that followed. In the text messages that followed, even several weeks after listening to his stuff. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it'll be a great week ahead of y'all.
So tell Kendra one more time what she should listen to this week.
Kendra, you're going to be listening to Robert Glasper. The album is called Double Booked. Blue Note is the record label, and it was out in 2009. That was a few years after your big hair and honking the horn. Oh, I'm gonna have to go to full screen on that one so you can see my big face doing that. Driving and honking the horn. It was a few years after that. Um, but yeah, Robert Glasper, Double Booked is
Yeah,
the album, and it's gonna be a whole lot of fun. It's gonna be a whole lot of fun.
whole lot of fun. So let me just coming up in the next couple of episodes, we're going to have a special guest on our show, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a little bit different than what you're used to, a little different format, a little different information, but we're hoping to glean a little bit of information from this special guest on how to help us listen. And I won't say too much more. Do you want to interject anything else, Drew?
I don't want to say who it is because it'll be fun. Um,
Right?
but I think one of the things I want to interject is that as we started on this journey, it was really a listening to the albums. And if I'm honest, it was just about the album in a conversation on Tuesday morning, which has been going on now a little over every Tuesday morning, with the exception of a trip
Vacation.
that you had,
Yeah.
and then Christmas. And then we started watching documentaries, and then we started reading and understanding what it is to really truly listen. And so part of this journey in this this up and coming special episode will have something that becomes crucial along the way in the conversations. We sit here and talk for an hour. Back and forth, we're talking, but we're also listening to the feedback. What did Matt have to say? What did Drew have to say? And we can play off that over the weeks. What we've learned in some of the books is that's called music. jazz improvisation. I want to hear what somebody else is playing so I can respond. And this call and response happens, and all of a sudden our brains start exploding, going, man, I really need to listen to the world around me. Honk louder, I'm listening to jazz, or don't worry, cut me off again. I don't care. I got jazz music on. And the
That's right.
world started to change, and it led us to a few other personal journeys as well as it did just in its spiritual sense as well. And so I think that with the conversation that we're about to have and the interview that we'll do, I think it'll shed some light on a few things moving forward, as well as bring more participants into the channel.
Absolutely. So just a quick website update. I did run a few updates on the website. We do now have a daily album recommendation, and I have fixed that so it will rotate every 24 hours.
Cool.
If you've been on the website and you've only seen one album, I had to fix that today. So I did add, yeah, theunconnoisseur.com. So I did add a lot of albums up there for a daily album recommendation. If you're looking for something to listen to besides us droning on about Cassandra, head over to the Unconnoisseur, click on the album of the day link, and it will provide you with an interesting album to pull up on iTunes or Google Music. So and then Drew, you and I talked a little bit about this earlier this week in one of our conversations about a fun little game that we might start. Do you want to do that on this one? It's going to be.
I don't think I'm ready,
You're not
but I
ready?
bet I could.
Okay, well,
What
this is
do
an easy one. Let me describe the game. You've all heard about 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, where you find Michael Keaton and who he acted with in what movie and how they all connect to Kevin Bacon. That's the one that sticks out in my mind. You might have heard of 6 Degrees of Ronald Reagan. I don't know, but so we're gonna do a little game every week of 6 Degrees to Miles Davis. Okay, so it's just a fun little thing that we're going to talk about real quick. This is going to be super easy because there's only 1 degree. She opened for Miles in 1999 at the JVC Jazz Festival in Chicago.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So,
I listened to that album this morning in my marathon.
Yeah. Cassandra opened up for Miles. So there's only 1 degree. there's Cassandra and Miles.
Oh, my word.
Uh-huh.
Well, and that's funny because the name that I was going to drop for my degrees was a first connection from the same time. The bass player for that tour was Marcus Miller.
Oh, yeah.
And I've enjoyed his stuff, and he did a bass trio, and I forget the name of that trio right now with it was like Victor and somebody else, but they did a bass trio. I mean, come on, that was fun.
Yeah.
So Marcus Miller was what I was thinking about. So
okay, so 2 degrees. Yeah. I'm saying Cassandra, Marcus Miller, Miles Davis. Yeah. Awesome. Oh, that's awesome.
So
tell us what you think about 6 Degrees. If you've got a different way around it, if you might have someone else, leave us a comment. Let us know, please.
absolutely. And I think that's funny because these are the newer performers. These are people that you can see today.
Right.
So that's cool.
Yeah.
All right. We wrap this up. Remember that we're going to be listening to number 89, Robert Glasper. Album is Double Booked, and it was on Blue Note Record from 2009. We'll see y'all in a week.
Well, hey, if you want to email us at theunconnoisseur@gmail.com. The website, of course, is https theunconnoisseur.com. Takes you right to our webpage. You can find me on TikTok at The Unconnoisseur. And Drew, you're working on shorts. And we're going to get some YouTube shorts out here very, very soon.
Yeah, boy.
So, thank you all so much for joining us this week. We look forward to doing it again next week with Robert Glasper and Double Booked.
Cheers, y'all. See ya.
Bye.
Bye, Felicia.